I haven't been on a cruise. That's a sad story. Response.
Shout out DJ Darkness.
Let's play.
We're live for another episode of Above Average Black Men. As usually, the pregame is where most of the conversation takes place. So we're getting better at it, though. We're getting better at it.
I like our candid conversations.
Welcome to another episode of Above Average Black Men. Yours truly, Chris A. Pender Sr.
Chris Jr., as always, here to empower, inspire, and uplift the community through our guests and our conversations. And we're excited to have you guys here with us tonight. We're going to have another great, dope conversation. Dev, you know what to do, bro.
Devin Pender just here to say like, follow, subscribe, share, comment, interact with us. Let's make this or build this community, the Above Average Black Men community.
And now you can call us at 215-902-6724.
Whoa.
215-902-6724.
That's enough for you.
And you can get a treat. Devin's going to answer. He's going to answer with like, follow, subscribe. Yo, today's topic is, and I've been fishing around with this all day, talking to various people, is do we find the NAACP as being irrelevant? Do you think we're progressing as African Americans or regressing?
And do you
I'll
think,
let you guys start it off.
I was just kind of digging into that question. Are we saying the NAACP has regressed? Or we're just
It's a two-part question. Do we find the NAACP still relevant? And the second part of it is, do you think we're progressing or regressing?
So the first one for me, you want to take it, or I'm already in it?
Yeah.
First one, the NAACP to me is not as prevalent as it used to be. Devin and I were kind of having a conversation before even jumping on the show. It's just you don't really hear people talking about it as much anymore.
But we said relevant. Go ahead.
But yeah, it has to do with relevancy. Like who talking about that? Who knows them? They only coming around, or barely even when it's some type of issue that takes place in the Black community. It's not even necessarily the NAACP who's at the forefront anymore. So it's just like they are somewhat irrelevant. Like they don't hold the same weight that they used to. They don't.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It's not really relevant nowadays. Like growing up, I mean, obviously outside of you, Dad, like I really didn't hear that much about the NAACP in school or different things like that. So I think it's really irrelevant. And are you talking about like as a community as Black people, have we regressed like as a whole?
As a whole.
Oh yeah.
He just wanted to double check before he jumped down.
I definitely do think that.
So let me ask you another question.
Stagnant.
Do you think it's not relevant because it no longer serves a purpose? Or do you think it's not relevant because nobody's talking about it? You don't hear about it anymore?
I mean, it's kind of both. Like, what is their purpose?
Because like I really only hear about them like when there's an award or like a tragedy. Never they're just donating or they're in the community holding any events. You never really hear about that.
It's an NAACP show. Anyway, it's a different story.
Yeah, but no, I wish they would do stuff like be in the high schools or something like that. Teach kids about politics and like how to be engaged or actively involved in their community. Like,
I hear you.
On the ground.
I hear you. But now this is me, as the old 4-year. See, I think it is very much relevant, and the reason why I think it's relevant is because one thing out of the main things they did, the NAACP did, was give us people of color a united voice. It was a place where that drew us together. It was a commonality. You didn't have all this different, barbershop discussions that didn't go any further than the barbershop. Discussions in back rooms of churches that didn't go any further than the back rooms of churches. The NAACP was a place where all African Americans, regardless if they were Christians, whatever, could come together and share in a voice. And sharing, for equality, and fight for affirmative action. And, it's kind of ironic because if you look at, they taking books out of school, that's a fight that the NAACP, they're trying to champion. To your point, they don't have the resources, and I'll blame y'all for that later.
No, but that's the point right there, too. Like, all these things happening, where they at?
Well, they try, but this is, I think, the reason why you say it's irrelevant, and because I remember I had discussion with people because a bunch of people thought everything was okay. A bunch of people thought that racism, people look like us, was that we don't need them anymore because those same causes weren't being championed, but they should have been. You know, we reached a place as people of color where we thought everything was okay. And I even did go a step further. That's how the Bible got out of school, because you start doing little things and nobody pays attention. These little test cases and stuff they do. Nobody actually pays attention. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day, these little 10 test cases that you ignored, they have the authority to do what they're doing now, banning books. You're not going to teach African American history in school anymore. Like I told you that I'm watching a thing in Arkansas. They're talking about banning books on Native Americans and people with disabilities. DeSantis is at war with Disney. I mean, all the issues we got in the country, those things are coming to the forefront. But behind those things, you're talking about suppressing votes, voter rights, African people. Behind those things, they've gained the power to do those things. I am pro-life all the way, but I told Deb, your mom, we were talking about it when the whole Roe versus Wade went down. That was a test case because they knew if we put this out there, every Christian would fall behind it. Now you got the Supreme Court, and I'll get back to our question. You got this. They ruled on a case where this lady didn't even have no lawsuit, don't even own a business, but she just won a case in the Supreme Court where she got the right to tell people who are homosexuals, whatever you call it, alternative lifestyles, that she doesn't have to allow to do business. She has to serve. And she don't have a business. So, that's another form of discrimination. So it's slowly being eroded away, and we're not paying attention to it. And that's the kind of fights the NAACP used to champion.
And that's where I think that goes to what we were saying. Where are they still relevant? Like, no,
I think
where are they? Because they should be championing these things, right? And I think one thing for us is like, I think sometimes we're not as proactive. Like, I think a lot of times we're very reactive when it comes to like, oh, there's a problem, now we got to fix it, instead of like us just being like, man, let's make sure that we're arming and trying to get ahead of these.
I was watching the show the other day, and this is why I think where people misunderstand or misconstrue NAACP. Somebody was like, yeah, where's the black, where's the white church at? And they're talking about discrimination. And after Reagan Pastor came back and said, this is not about the white church, this is about humanity, society as a whole. Fighting against racism, fighting against the stuff, and I think people misinterpret the NAACP for the thing that we're against, they're against all people that don't look like. That's not the case. What they did was there was no voice for African Americans. It wasn't them versus white people, Chinese people, Asian. That wasn't the intent of the NAACP. It was unite the voices of African Americans. Color people back then, what they used to call it, CP. It was, and so I think what happened was people not understanding what it was meant for, not understanding the purpose it served. Now felt it was irrelevant now, or no longer needed, because we don't have to send them back on the bus anymore. We can sit at the lunch counter now. All those things, but in the meantime, behind the scenes, things affirmative action. They just did. We gonna talk about that. Look at Harvard. Now you can't go to Harvard. Well, they took affirmative action from Harvard in school. I forget the school down south. And affirmative action wasn't saying that you let African Americans in the school were not qualified, because they still had to pass the test and do the thing. What it said was, we're gonna allow some funding for those who can't afford it, who are qualified.
What's funny though about like kind of your first question and the second question about the relevancy of the NAACP and kind of black people, whether we progressed or regressed, I think we just become stagnant and like comfortable. And that's also with the NAACP, as well as our, like, to your point, like, all right, now black, we can drink from the water fountain. Yeah. We can use any bathroom. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, but I ain't mean it in that. But
that is the simplicity of it all. I think that's what people
not seeing the big picture, the big fight.
Well, no, it depends on what your goal is. And I it's just like, I have a conversation with somebody about, they were talking about being free in Christ. Being free in Christ don't mean you can do whatever you want to do and be buck wild. There's a responsibility that comes with it. And I think with the NAACP, bringing it back home, I think it's the same thing. People thought, okay, we accomplished these little nuggets, so now I'm free. But you're not really free. Yeah. They take away rights. They take away things. They can ban a book in D.C., but they won't pass no legislation against guns. So I mean, look at what's happening. People not paying attention to that. Even the pastor on there pitting white church against the black church. That's not the answer. It's one church. First of all, it's only one church. It's not a white church or a black church. But that's the other side of it. But
I was gonna say, kind of related to church and the NAACP.
Yeah.
Like white people actually helped found the NAACP.
Well, people don't pay attention because if you go back and look at the march and the song, there was Caucasians and white people involved. But if you don't know your history, you fall for the okie dokie. So people who think about the NAACP who don't know that, who don't know that there were Catholics and Jews and Protestants who walked over that bridge and stuff, but they don't know that when you don't know your history.
Yeah.
You just know the pictures they put up there and you know what they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So you got people believing that it was all black versus white, and that wasn't the case. I say this all the time. There's bad cops, there's bad lawyers, there are bad plumbers. Whenever you put people in the mix, there's going to be bad people.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. Every person you encounter of a different ethnicity wasn't a member of the Ku Klux Klan. People would lead you to believe that, but that wasn't,
That's the reality though for some people.
Yeah.
It's like they on both sides. Like black people, I think sometimes you see white people, you immediately think like, oh, they're racist.
I'm bad to cut you off. I was just really curious just to ask, because you did say earlier that we don't support the NAACP. Can you kind of explain that and expound on that? Like, what makes you think that?
People don't even know. Chris already answered the question. He said people don't even know what it is.
How we supposed to support it?
So how can you push through it? How can you support something?
I gotta just randomly Google
you guys are spoiled because your mom and I made sure you knew certain things.
Yeah.
But I talk to adults who have no idea, man. Who just like last week when he said fire plug and y'all was like, what? And then he turned it around and said, yo,
whose responsibility is that? Is it on the NAACP to be more visible to people?
I think it's
or
both.
Is it on like people just kind of find their way in?
I think it's both. I think the NAACP needs to be more visible. They need to make more appearances at high schools. They need to educate people on who they are. They do, and they need to educate all people.
Educate people, right?
So I'm not against that at all. But also you have to understand is, we just like anything in history, man. Most of what I learned, I learned because my grandmother passed it down, sitting there talking to my grandma.
Yeah.
Who passed it down to my mom or talking to my mom and say, I pass it on to you. So that's another way that we got to learn about those things. This is the same thing with church. If I just relied on the definition of what people told me church was, I'd be like these other people walking around. Man, I ain't want no church. This white man's religion, all this stuff. But when you study to show yourself approved, when you really investigate things and not just listen to other people, and you pass it on like I pass it on to you, and you don't pass it on to brainwash somebody, you pass it on so somebody can have the right information to make an intelligent decision. So I think the NAACP, yes, but also, we got to talk about our history. And it's not being racist. It's not being, down on another race because you talk about your history. Because our history to this country is important. Our history to the church is important. We've done a lot to build this country physically and monetarily. Yeah. We have, and I think that's what the NAACP did. It gave us a united voice. It gave people to come together. So okay, we're gonna, we're gonna boycott or we're gonna whatever we do. We're gonna do it united. It united in chapters in different cities. So it's intention, and it brought all these cities together across the country. In a time where it wasn't social media.
So do you think they still do a good job of that now? Like bringing, because I've read that there's like 2,200 different chapters. They're within colleges and stuff like that, trying to get the next generation that's coming. But still, I don't think there's a lot of kind of growth as you can see within our generation.
And because
especially when you see all these other groups, not to like cut you off, but like think about Black Lives Matter, like how
all
big and how they were able to kind of just really blow up and like really be a voice for Black people.
But they
that could have been the NAACP.
But and they should have. But that's another opportunity. I hate to say missed opportunity, but that was another opportunity for them to be more involved. To let people know who they are, to let people know. That the organization already exists. One thing is that. No, I'm just saying they should have did a better job. One thing about Black Lives Matters is people seize the opportunity. Now, another difference is you got to remember in the NAACP's in their prime time, there was no social media. There was 3, 6, 10, 12 TV stations. There was no cable TV. You know, you read the newspaper about stuff happening. Usually when you read a newspaper, it was the day after. The thing about now, Black Lives Matters came at a time where everything you can see right away. In real time. Yeah, you can see in real time, or you don't have to wait till the next day. A video's coming up 5, 10 minutes later. You know, so if you miss it, it's going viral 5, 10 minutes later, and then you throw in all the cable channels. So they were able to utilize that platform of the platforms, so to speak, to get out there much faster. Now, to your point, yeah, the NAACP has to get more. You know, they got to catch up with the times. They do. They do. And I think if it was me and I was marketing for them, you know, I think you just can't target young people. You have to put young people and seasoned veterans together because you have to pass the history. You know, every young person is not going to know the history about the NAACP. Every young person is not going to understand what it really is supposed to do. So they like you, they thinking, okay, they haven't heard from me. Well, the only time I hear them is, you know, but I'm not the marketing person for them. But I mean, that's what you have to do. You got see, this one thing we do in society, which I don't like, is we always think we separate people to get what we want instead of bringing people together. I don't know where that came from. You know, because both sides have a lot of information they can share. You know, both sides do. They got things that they can pass on. They have things.
I think, like, personally, like you said, the NAACP definitely needs to do a better job at educating people. I think one thing that they need to do is evolve and just change with the times. Like, get with, like, there was certainly a missed opportunity. They could be online and reach people where they are. I think they do certainly have the reach and the name power to at least try to get older generations, some people of influence that still has some type of connection to younger generations. Like, you know how Diddy did like the GOAT thing like years ago?
Yeah.
Like, right, like they could easily get with somebody on that type of program, you know what I mean? Find somebody that is within the culture and like try to but rebuild that image and brand.
But people need to, but that's not, but I think that doesn't make them. See, to me, when I think of relevancy, I think of something that's still needed. I think of something that's still like,
it's a need.
I'm not thinking in terms of whether they're out there like they should be, you know. And I think it's relevant. I think the problem with it is, one, you hit on the head, the miscommunication between generations, because you have to tell people need to know the history of what it was originally for. You know, unfortunately, more people know about sports than anything else. You talk about sports, people can go back to the Philadelphia A's and they were running a list.
They need to get LeBron James the third chapter.
I think, you know, maybe so. But I also think that at some point in time, we have to figure out how to have a united voice. How do we have a place where we can go nonviolent, you know, not based on your economic background or your demographics, you know, not even based on religion, and I'm a Christian, everybody knows it, but a place where people can come together, you know, and have one voice. Like, for instance, you know, they're starting to ban books. So if DeSantis gets in office, it's probably going to go across the country. So what do we wait till every state the books are banned before people start talking back, before people start saying no? And that's how the Bible got out of school, you know, but he's doing it going across. And if he takes over, they got the power. You can say that, but if he takes over, who thought in the world that he was going to be attacking Disney? Who thought in the world that he you know, and I'm not, this is not about politics, you know, state by state, they're starting to do, and one was it, Oklahoma, they banned TikTok. I'm not a TikTok fan. I'm not a TikTok fan at all. But, you know, you won't ban assault rifles, but you ban TikTok. So what's next? No, I'm just saying, you get, it was funny because you talked about it, and I'll let you talk. It's funny because you said jokingly, freedom of speech. How is that freedom of speech? I mean, I'm not a TikTok fan, but you banning TikTok, but you won't ban assault weapons. You know, so I think, you know, and so what it is a slippery slope, but we've allowed them to start down the slope because we let things happen and we don't think long term. We don't think, okay, we always think about now. We're not thinking, well, you know, like me, when I look at McKinsey, at 4 years old, I think about how decisions we make today going to impact him. You know, personally I will, but, you know, I think about my dad, 85 years old, your grandpa, around 85 years old, my mom, around 85 years old. That's kind of the life expectancy, you know. So, you know, McKinsey's going to still be growing. You know, if you decide to have kids, your kids got to grow up in this world. See, we don't think like that. I was talking to a couple, and I said this to them, they didn't understand. Even marriage is generational. It's not just about two people getting married. You know, you're going to have kids, you know, all that stuff come into play. And I think it's the same thing when we look at politics or when we look at, we talk about organizations like the NAACP. We don't think generational, we think about now. So I'm good. I'm good. I don't know. I'm not, racist things are not happening to me, so we don't need them anymore. So we all went on a rabbit hole. And then soon, OJ said it. It's funny. I never thought I'd be involved in OJ. What did he say? We don't need the NAACP anymore. I think it's totally wrong. As soon he got in trouble, hey y'all, we gotta stick together.
Yeah.
So you see how quickly that's it. So, but we gotta stop waiting till we get in trouble. And and separate is not that. It's like Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter did not say that no other life matters. It didn't say that Black life was more important than any other life. What it simply said was that we have value and we're tired of being devalued. However, it was turned around, and lack of education, because they should have did a better job of explaining that portion of it, to us versus them.
Yeah.
And so I think we got to, I agree with you, education, but also we got to educate ourselves. So some of it's back on us, man. We got to educate ourselves. If you know your history, then you know what role the NAACP played.
It's funny.
The history of this country, there was a need, just like when the latest thing they passed on the Supreme Court about Harvard and about affirmative action. And two of the judges said there's no need for that. Of course, there's no need for it because you're rich. You're rich, and you in a privileged population. So of course, there's no need for it. However, they have the power now because we allow it to happen, so they can overturn anything they want.
So just kind of related to that, educating ourselves. I don't want to kind of take this off topic down a rabbit hole.
You always do.
But no, because that's related to, we used to talk about taking the books out of schools, and I just feel like
that's thing is crazy.
That's like on us too, right? To
of course
be
it
able
is.
to continue educating our kids.
Yeah, but it's still, but I don't disagree with you. I was having a conversation with a group of teachers today, and we were talking, and we all said the same thing. We're sick and tired of people using COVID as an excuse because your child is home with you. However, we know every parent's not educating their child at home. Right. We know that. So if you know that, how do you remedy it? How do you fix the solution? You've got to come up with an alternative. Yes, I agree 100%. Parents should be educating their kids. How many of your friends did book reports in the summertime? How many of your friends?
Yeah, I'm saying.
I'm just saying.
But then
how
how can we tell?
Who you parents sat down with them and said, okay, you ain't doing Benjamin Banner. You want to pick another person.
Right.
So I mean,
how can we tell them to look up the NAACP when they not even doing that?
Yeah, but that's my point. When you say, well, who is parent? And it is parents' responsibility, but we know it's not happening.
Yeah, so I think I don't know. NAACP needs to step it up.
They do, but they need young people. They need.
Yes,
I'm not disagreeing.
People
I'm not
shot in the arm. Like it's a new. And we still got some of the same issues, same fights, but it's like a new fight. You gotta evolve and get with the times. And I just feel like they failed miserably at that. And is it do you think it's too late? Do you think they can turn it around and really be a presence? I think we do need that.
I think if they get the right people, if they get the right marketing people, yeah, they can turn it around. I think they could do what Black Lives Matters did on a more and have a more universal or even a global impact, because people, they have a history, they have a foundation. Mm-hmm. So and that's how you can build on it. So, but what you have to do is, and again, I'm not the marketing person, but one, I think Devin said you need to start holding some events when you invite young people out. Mm-hmm. You need to start having some events. Hey, come out and meet us. Come out and you need some older people, some seasoned people talking to some of the younger people. Passing it on. No, but you need those conversations. We laugh and joke, but we had those conversations. Mm-hmm. However, I'm not the marketing person. And also then, like any organization, you have to adjust to the times. I am not by any means a huge fan of social media, but that's what you have to do now. Mm-hmm. The guy who came and changed my tire today, he said that's his most effective. He said that's his most effective way of advertising. He said, hey, Airbus is charging me $200 a month for advertising. He said, and I tried them all, but social media. Yeah. But that's the way. Yeah, he said
the big businesses are all there. You got your Coca-Colas, your Pepsis, all these big brands are using it. They paying social media. I guess personas of people to actually
influencers.
Yeah, influencers to actually push their product and stuff like that. So it's definitely ways of trying.
And I agree, but I think as long as we deal with racism, race, and we race is here. And I'm not going to say I don't think it's. I think it's here to stay because things are not being done. Things are not being done to address it. Even having basic conversations again, NAACP. You know, they could hold a symposium where they invite people out and have discussions around race relations. You know, and it doesn't have to be deep. You know, I said this to a couple pastors. Yo, you can just get some pizza and invite people from different ethnicities and sit around and have a conversation.
They should do something with the NBA.
You know,
or all these different activists out here, like your Dr. Umars of the world and different people like that.
You get it up.
But no, I'm talking like people like that. Why do you think they're not, willing to do work with the NAACP?
Because you know how he is. Yeah. Because then one thing about the NAACP, they never tolerated nonsense. This is like Martin Luther King. For as much as Martin Luther King fought against civil rights, the hate and everything that he endured, he never spoke out against. You know, I say this all the time. If you go back and look at his I Had a Dream speech, it was for all mankind.
Yeah.
You know, he talked about his daughter. He talked about when we could play together. He didn't get on there and say, well, we can go back to Africa and have our own place. And no, that wasn't his dream. You know, his dream was given to him by God. But his dream, if you go back and look at the speech, it was a universal dream. It wasn't, yo, let's kill everybody. Let's get our own block and bunker. No. So, and that's still prevalent today. The problem with it is we're not operating under that same premise. We have this separate is better now. We've been given this mantra that separate is better, and that's what we do. We're just following that blueprint. But the problem is when you've been separate, there's no conversation. Nothing ever gets resolved. No relationship is ever formed without conversation. I don't care what kind of relationship you try to form. If there's no conversation or dialogue, it's not going to be a healthy relationship. It's like a married couple, and you have a problem, and you never talk about it. It's not going to get any better. We're going to be mad at each other. We're not going to talk for a day. The day later, we all get back together like nothing happened. Yeah, but it's never going to get resolved. So it's no different when you want to talk about race relations. It's the same thing with poverty. There's no real effort being made to offset poverty. Now, back to the NAACP, that's something they could be doing. They can have food banks, and they do have some. But I'm just saying, I hear what you're saying. But then to do that, you got to bring people into that thing like this generation.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is like they need to be thinking and operating like a business. You know, like how to a certain extent, your Salvation Armies and like all those other really kind of like big nonprofits, they run like businesses.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the mindset also that I think we need to start to take an approach is not on like you're taking money and you're scamming people and stuff like that. But it's just like
they think about
business because it's some nonprofits that
I'm laughing because those two things is definitely just big businesses scamming.
Oh, some companies doing it.
I mean, I agree, but
you know what I mean, like some companies that's abusing the power they have.
But it also needs to be a separation. I think it's, and I use the church as an example. I think the church runs into components. A healthy church, they have a business side because they have to pay bills, they got to pay staff. Some master running a business side. They can't just go willy-nilly, so I get it. But the two sides don't clash. You know, if you're a healthy church, your business side is not dictating you the ministry side. God is still in control. So I think if you set up a nonprofit like that, yeah, I think it can be effective. You know, but you see the thing about nonprofits, from my personal experience, that they don't adjust with the times. What I mean adjust with the times, you find a nonprofit like me. If I found an organization back in 2002. All right, so again, 2020, 21 years ago. So, my board has changed several times in that time frame. Why? Because the times have changed. I can't have everybody 62 years old on my board because we all thinking the same way. Right. We still thinking like, man, we got 3, 6, 10, 12. We don't need that. Yeah. So you have to adjust. You have to have people that adjust with the times. You have to have new blood coming in, and that's anywhere. A church would die if only senior citizens showed up, or if 120-year-olds joined the church, 40 years ago, they're all 60 now. So if you did nothing to change that congregation, did nothing, your church is dry bones.
I think that board analogy that you use in terms of like, those people that are kind of behind the scenes making decisions, like they have to actually be growing and adjusting as well.
I was with
They need a diverse board, like people with different ideas.
Perfect example.
Perspective.
I was with an organization, and we were, because the way contracts were paying us, we were always behind with payroll and stuff. So I had managed to cut a deal with a bank who was going to front us money. They were going to give us a line of credit, so we could stay on payroll. And when we got paid, we would just pay the bank back. They would pay all that stuff. We would pay them back. Guess what we got? So we would still make money off of it. It was going to be very minimal interest. And I remember somebody on the board, an older guy, well, the Bible says you can't be a borrow money. Dude, did you pay cash for your car? Did you pay cash for your house? You borrow money. You got a mortgage. You got a car note. So what I'm saying, but because it was one of those older boards, and that's why the organization went out of business, because I'm trying to take them into the future. I got an organization that's ready to pay us to do money and to do business with us in Chester. Well, why can't we do it right here in a neighborhood, a different necessity in Chester neighborhood? But hold up, but that neighborhood, check it out. They weren't going to pay us though. They weren't going to pay us. Chester was going to pay us. So you can't, and that's what I meant. But why you got to change your board? Because if your board is not adjusting to the times, you go out of business because times have changed. People still volunteer. Don't get me wrong. But now, because of economics and I was talking about with the tire guy, people don't have the luxury to volunteer 8 hours a day because they got to eat and live indoors.
I'm interested to know who's going to be important.
So you have to make the proper changes. And I think, I say the NAACP have not kept up with the times, but now I'm gonna blame y'all generation because people who tell me, when I hear people say, and I'm on y'all about this all the time, well, this is not that. What's the solution? Nobody stepped up. Black Lives Matter was good for when we went through this simple phrase, but nobody stepping up now saying, okay, let's have a place where we can have one voice, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I'm just saying, let's have a place where you can have one voice. It's like we formed this show so we can highlight people. People are not doing it.
Yeah, they all up there. They're all up there.
Oh, you ain't gonna be insulting them.
I'm not insulting.
Which branch is that? Don't say
that.
Respectfully, of course.
Respectfully. Whenever young people say respectful, you know what that means. I'm just saying, I think we have to get back to the basics. We have to create a platform. And this is what I think the NAACP, and again, I'm not the marketing person. You got to go back and you got to create a platform. First of all, young people feel vested, like they have an interest. And there's no different in churches. If you want to attract young people, you got to make them feel part of it. You got to make them feel like
you got to give them something to do.
Well, I mean, not just something to do. You got to make it worthwhile.
Like, I definitely feel like gotta give us something to do. Like, let us show up and be active and participate and do those things. I think that is something that can go a long way. Like, I know we're talking about kind of researching and finding out more about the NAACP, and then what? We think afterwards.
So I had an interesting extra question. So when you think about the NAACP, like, what's the first person or first thing that comes to mind in general?
W.E. Du Bois.
Wait.
See, that's I feel like that's the point, though.
Well, when I think about the NAACP, I don't think about a person. I think about a movement. I think about an organization that was founded when we were still called colored people, for the advancement, which is called the advancement of colored people. That's what it was formed for. It wasn't formed for us against them. Let's get a militia. Let's do the Marcus Garvey thing. We all gonna buy boats and sail back to Africa. That's not what it was. It was the advancement. Now, and it was needed at the time because you had rules, you had stuff put in that prohibited us from going to say, wasn't that it was just separate schools. We weren't getting the same results. Hence, it still happened today. It wasn't just, you got to get on the back of the bus, but you got to get your seat up when somebody doesn't look like you get on the bus. You cancel the lunch counter. They could pour stuff on you and spit on you and hit you, and you couldn't respond. So times were different. Sometimes more things change, more they stay the same. But so that's what I think of a movement. I don't think of a person as an individual because any person you can find flaws with. W. Du Bois and George Washington Carver had a feud. But the feud to me was W. Du Bois felt like the only way for African Americans to improve was college. All got to get educated. George Washington Carver, who I'll agree with, you can't take a guy that's been in slavery for 60 years and now put him in college. You don't know how to read or write. So now what you do is you create, which we've done a good job in our community, you create another system of having have-nots. So I understand both sides. For those who are able to get educated, get what you got to get. But for those who can't, you can't leave them behind. Everybody can't go overseas and lead a country like W. Du Bois did and get educated. You know, you got to know a lot of African Americans at that time, they couldn't read and write. So now when you do somebody 40 years old, now you're going to stick them in a college. So I think you've got to have both sides of it. But again, it goes back to education and knowing your history.
Yeah, that kind of just made me think. It's like I wish there was a way they can kind of address both issues of, like, I guess, education. But then there are people, not to kind of compare today to slavery, but you know, there's people who the college route, education.
Man, put me in office. I got an answer for that, man. Yeah, but I think, and I'm only kidding about to put me in office, but I do. But it's not that complicated. The system we have in place now, and this is where organizations like the NAACP come in handy. The system that we have right now, you know, the reason why the system that we have right now, we have technical difficulties. I don't know why we got cut off.
Okay, so we still live on.
Yeah.
Let's do. That's how you know we're talking about some.
Yeah, it comes off. But I think
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I think what you have to put in play is this. I think one, you have to take into account that even people who don't want to go to college are not necessarily not college material. There's some people who don't want to go because I have friends who graduated who used to be friends. They just retired to school. They just didn't want to go to school. They wanted to make money, so they went into the service. You know, I have other friends who not friends now, but who decide to get jobs in a technical, some kind of vocational field because they want to be entrepreneurs. They're doing quite well for themselves.
There's money in that.
So I do agree. But I think this goes to systems like this on purpose because if I can think of this, and this is where organizations in NAACP, they used to have this for African Americans. You know, you should have different tracks in school. You know, when I went to Donald's vocation, you can either take a vocation or you can take business. You had different choices. You know, you got to go back to that. And in the African American community, Black communities, we had that. Mm-hmm. Everybody wasn't going to school to go to college. You had people who wanted to do different things, and it was okay. Yeah. It was okay to say, I want to drive a bus. I'm not saying do it now. It was okay to say, I want to have a career. It was okay. We kind of lost sight of it. So for me, what I would do is, and again, I'm not the NAACP, not the marketing.
President.
No, you would set up tiers. You have a tier for those who want to go to college, and you can go back and forth from tiers, but you need a vocational tier. Yeah. You also need a civil service tier for those who don't want to do either. You know, you can be a postman, so you can be a police officer. There's a civil service, and those who want to do nothing. This is the part nobody likes. We got a ton of litter to be picked up. Seriously, we know, not just trash, clean up the barns. You know, and so you set those tracks up in school. You want one of those tracks, and you can go around, but you got to help some people. Need a little bit of help discovering their purpose. You know, I was talking to a young lady who worked for me today. You know, and it's hot, so I was going to call out tomorrow because it's hot. First of all, how smart is that to say that to your boss? I'm thinking about calling out tomorrow because it's hot. Okay, so we get past that. So the second thing she says, she goes, well, no, I said, well, you do realize it's a job. Well, what do you mean? It's a job. When you have a job, you're supposed to show up. That's the primary function of a job. You know, that's what a job does. You know, well, how many need to get something else? Like what? I'm gonna be a security officer. Easier. How is that easier? So what are you gonna do with somebody twice your size? Yeah, but so I said, well,
they only get robbed every other month.
So but this one, so at what point though? At what point do you start thinking about yourself in terms of I need to improve my life? And again, that's why I like the NAACP because they help people discover a vision. They help people see there's a different way to do stuff. They help people see, man, and sometimes you can help people see they still blind. You know, but you need organizations like that. You know, you do. I mean, if I had my way, everybody would go to church. You know, everybody would go to church, and every church would be talking about vision. Every church would be talking about purpose. I would. That's me, I'd be like, hey, churches be going. They'd be having church in school. We be in school saying, hey, this is what God can do for you. We be in school telling you need a vision. If you got a vision, God will give you a provision. I'll be saying all that stuff. You know me, so you can't. No, you'll be surprised when I'm talking. You'll be surprised when I'm talking to kids and stuff in school. I may not use the address itself, but you can say things because we're in the time now. And again, I go back to NAACP could do this. Folk need to be inspired. We got a bunch of uninspired people walking around here, and they're not. And one thing about the NAACP, it brought people together. It was for lack of a better term, it drew people. I was gonna say lightning bolt, but I won't say that, but it was a magnet. It was a magnet where people were drawn to a trash man, lawyer, doctor, and you had people come together for a common cause.
And that's what I was gonna say or ask is like, do we feel like that we have that from them today?
No, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I just the whole purpose I came with the topic was hopefully we're making people aware.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're making people aware.
I think because one point that you made that you said it is on us to actually get involved, want to get involved, and be a voice of change. Like I think we do need to be in there to kind of have those types of conversations with the people that are in charge that are maybe a little bit older at the moment. I think the reason that you kind of see some people in those situations or older people in those positions is because, like you said, we don't get involved until generally it's too late or in your latter years of life. Like nobody's really thinking about it.
I want to apologize to our Facebook crowd. We think Mark Zucker cut us off because we were talking about we got cut off.
Might cut us off again because
we're back now, so I'm sorry for technical. No, but I think it's important. Organizations like the NAACP, to me, will always have this place until we do better. And I think we're not doing better because there's nobody facilitating or orchestrating the dialogue. And I go back to the gentleman. I don't want to say his name because everybody knows who he is. Well, popular guy. For some reason, he's the elected spokesman for Black people, which I never get a chance to vote on that. But he was one blaming the white church, and another person's like, nah, it's a humanity problem. It's not a white church, Black church. Humanity has to come together and say enough is enough. These people who, and he summed it up better. You're saying there's a whole large segment of America, who agrees with you, but that's not how they're voting. They're telling you that because they want you to hear that, but that's not how they're voting. They're voting supporting these racist antics by Donald Trump and these other people.
But
these people in office who banning books, people voted for them.
That's another good point as to why they aren't necessarily relevant or doing what they need to do. All these shootings that have been taking place here in Philadelphia, we had one over past week, and then in Baltimore, same thing. Like, where are they at? Like, where are they at when we have these issues?
They need young blood. They need young legs, man. You just pulled up the pictures of the people in it, man.
They have 2,200 chapters. I guarantee
there's young people in them. There's some young people.
Yeah, but are they in key positions? And again, I'm not saying this and that. It's like I use the King movement as a perfect example. And when I got involved in the King movement, the reason why I got involved in the King movement because they're doing what I'm doing, but I wanted it to be a global effort. I wanted to meet people in different states doing what I'm doing to duplicate. So I got so I'm hooked up with somebody in Jersey, I'm hooked up with a brother in DC, and we are, we getting it together, man. Matter of fact, if you watch it, we gonna plan. Your mom was getting we plan a cruise next year, so we can get together and really start strategizing and do something with the family instead of just the King men getting together. Because I really want to promote families. But so the NAACP has to do the same thing. It's not enough just to have chapters. You got to connect to those chapters. You just can't say I got to. That's like saying I got a franchise in 50 states. Ain't nobody paying. All 50 franchises running by themselves. No. Yeah. So I think that has to happen. In order for that to happen, folk got to come to the table. And you got to come to the table before stuff goes wrong, not when something. And you said it. One of the first things you said out your mouth was that we have to be more proactive and not reactive. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's happening with organizations like the NAACP. We become reactive, instead of proactive. We all know guns are a problem. It doesn't take 12 people getting shot in Baltimore or getting shot in for us to keep saying this. We know it's a problem. We know it's a problem,
especially in our community. So it's just like, man, where are they at? I know maybe that's not one of their causes. A lot of before previously we said it was like injustices, but things need to change.
No, but if you're doing, and see now I'm going against myself, then you can't say you're for the advancement of colored people if you're not against the things that's holding us down. You can't say that. You can't just be for the advancement of colored people because they fight against people who don't look like us. If I'm for the advancement of colored people, I'm working with color people. You know, I know some having the figures. I keep saying color people, but you know what I mean. I'm trying to the name. But you can't say you for my advancement if you're only looking at things that that's outside the circle. You can't advance anybody unless you work on them and work on their surroundings. You can't.
That's a great point, because I think that's a big problem in our community today too. Is that it's a lot of point outward, and those things like us taking accountability and being like, all right, these are the things that are within our control that we can be better at, and then we can take on the larger problems that are at hand.
But I think, but you need somebody. You need somebody or some organization to bring folk together. So, like, I guarantee you, there's some great discussions that take place in barbershops, but they never do the barbershops.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you, there's great discussions that's taking, people playing pinochle or whatever they playing, and there's some great discussions, some real nuggets are being shared. But there's no voice to bring everybody together. There's nothing to say, okay, how can we get folk together and start really making this a movement instead of just, a splash in the pan? Because that's what it is. Something happens, we march, we make a bunch of noise, and then we go back to our everyday lives.
Yep, and then we just wait till the next thing.
And then we can't wait to run the next ad to put all these pictures up there about all injustices. But now what I want to see is put something aside. What are we doing? What's changed from Tyree Martin to now? What's changed? What's going to be different from George Floyd to now? How do we combat that? I say this all the time. I should not have to tell my youth, that, to be safe, even monitor police officers. We know that. And for some people, I want to get deep. We even know the definition of the police. The first police they were slave catchers.
Okay.
If you don't know that. So we know all that. That's great. Well, what are we doing different? And again, my answer is church, but that ain't fix everything. I mean, not church, but God, I do. I think we're in a godless nation right now. And I think what you're seeing is a product of that. Whether you think I'm over the top or not, you're seeing a godless nation right now where there's too many people in this country who claim to know God, but nothing they do backs that up. Because, and I say this, and even in whatever organization it is, I never forget when I first learned the word utilitarianism. That word was like, wow. Mm-hmm. And when I found out what it meant is more powerful, is when somebody sacrifices something for the greater good. It's for the greater good. It doesn't mean, that you don't matter, but it means it's 40 people in here. This is going to benefit 39 other people, not just one person. That's not how we operate now. And there's nobody holding people accountable. You even got politicians who doing what's good for them.
Yeah, that's a bad problem.
But this is where organizations, if they can get the fuel again, this is where those organizations like the NAACP come in handy.
That happens in our organizations. That's a big problem.
Yeah, but this is why you need a place where you have a voice. When you have, I'm hard on the church too. If the church would get together, there's more churches than McDonald's in this country, man. The church has got. Can you imagine if every church said we gonna have VBS the same week? The same 2 weeks you have, it'll be a revival taking place. Even if every church got together, not white, not black, if every church got together and said, we're not going to stand for injustices anymore. We're not. I mean, I'm just telling you.
Partner with the NAACP.
Well, back in the day it was. Back in the day, they used to hold meetings in churches.
Now
they used to hold meetings in churches. But then see, what changed there was a lot of churches are no longer community churches. Back then, you went to the church in your community. So you knew everybody. Now you got people driving miles to go to church, man. People drive states to go to church. So it's a little different. And I always say this, and tomorrow I hear from somebody, because when you don't live in a neighborhood, it's hard to be invested in that neighborhood. It is. So if I go to a church and we're not rich, I'm okay. So if I go back to the church in my hood, and I'm there with somebody who's never really been from there. I was talking to somebody today, and they said something. We were talking about North Philly, and they made a comment. I was like, all I could do was kind of laugh because you just don't get it. We were talking about how some of the wrong things a generation in North Philly, and they were like, we don't understand. And, and I told them, I don't agree, but I understand. You are what you know.
Yeah.
And if that's what's being passed on, especially what you know is what you know is gained by what influences you. So if somebody who's influences you is telling you something, and nobody comes in to break the cycle, it becomes generational. So I laugh because at Toy Store, I know the dad, and I'll see the daughter with a son and their kid, and I'm thinking to myself like, man, this ain't skip a beat. This ain't skip a beat. You know, there was a guy I knew who every time I saw him was always trying to get over. So, you know, he ain't watching this, like I said. So his daughter comes in and she gets some stuff. I say that's all you can get and it's free. She goes out and turns her jacket on the wrong side and comes back like, I'm not gonna know who it is.
That was my twin.
Like, I'm like, and brings her daughter who you claim you got stuff for. Oh, she didn't get anything. She had to pick some stuff up for herself.
Oh my goodness.
So I mean, you know, but and I got a little frustrated, drove your mom crazy, but then I realized, yo, that's what they know.
It's like second nature.
But you are what you know.
Yeah.
So I say this is where I keep going back to NAACP. I agree with the things you're saying, but I also agree that people who know have to start pouring into those organizations. People who do know, you know, and I'm guilty because I'm going to make time now. I got to figure out how, because I was trying to get involved a couple of, I think a year ago, and because of COVID, they weren't doing anything. So and I kind of gave up on it, but I'm going to start, you know, doing this where I say, you know what, I got to get back involved, and I don't have time, but I do have time, you know, because again, it's generational. It's not just about me. It's when I play with Mackenzie, man. You know, what about him?
Especially with all this stuff that's going on right now, you know, like big banning books and
not teaching things in school. And
well, you know me, I always
say certain things.
Another perfect example. If you're a Muslim, they will argue to pray in school. Yeah, Muslims, they're allowed, and I'm not against it. But you say Jesus, man, you might as well curse somebody out. But if you're a Muslim, you can go pray. We have a student at camp. We're allowed to go pray every day. You know, and I'm not against it. But what I'm saying is, you know, it happens because nobody speaks up. There's no voice. It's the same thing with people who choose alternative lifestyles. They're very loud and speaking up for what they want. You can say whatever you want to say, but they stick together and they're very vocal about things that they want.
That's where we be at. We don't stick together as well. And like,
no, you said we wait till something major happens and then we make a lot of noise and then it dies down and we go back to our regular lives. You know, Million Man March. You know, and some people
that was supposed to be like an annual thing.
And some people get insulted when I say this. You know, I said, hey, you know, nothing against the Million Man March. But my thing, even before people went, I asked, what's next? You're going to go down there, and I agree with you. You're going to get all this great information. How many are going to come back and actually do something?
That's actually funny, like to think about the Million Man March, because I remember like how big that was and how everybody was talking about, oh, we going down there. We about to make a change.
So somebody said, oh man, it worked because people came back. What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, people came back on fire for about a month, or about maybe 2 months. Maybe I give them a year, and then they went back to their regular lives. And it happens all the time. It happens all the time. Remember? It happens all the time, man.
They put you for 10 minutes.
You know what the Bible says is like look in the mirror and walk away and forgetting what you saw.
Oh man.
So I go down there and I'm fired up. Then I come back. I'm still beating my wife. I'm still doing all this crazy stuff. I'm not a good dad. Because so you have to do stuff that's sustainable. And to your point, I do agree with you. When you get people in a situation where you start, and you at least get them to think, because I don't think you change people. I think you create an environment where they begin to think. And when people begin to think, they get a little more vulnerable. And when they're more vulnerable, they're easier to deal with. I think you do got to have something for them to do. I do agree that you got to plug people into stuff and say, okay, this is what I need you to do.
Like, yo, we need lawyers. We need that, like you said before too. Like all these different people that
you can go
educate our people.
See, to me,
you know what I mean?
I think even I'll start something simple in the grassroots, and this is NAACP can do. So if you're watching, man, y'all gotta hit me up, man. Seriously, you know what you can do? And I don't know why churches don't do this. If I had a church, I would do this. You can go to a local elementary school and read to those kids.
Yeah.
You can go to a local elementary school and read to those kids. You ain't got to go in there and read the Bible. Yes, go in there, but you can go there and you can read a book to them, and let them see your presence. Let them see who you say you are. You can do that. Yeah. How many our kids don't have a strong male role model? I'm talking to the tire guy, man, and I'm laughing because you said we had like a whole long conversation out there. So I said, he says, well, if I'm not doing nothing like Wednesday, man, maybe I can be on the podcast. You just got to talk. If you don't talk to people, And I was explaining to him, like, look, hey, I know you hustling, you doing your thing, man, but you got to turn this, you gotta get this thing together.
For a second, I thought you was going to say, like, y'all was about to get together for dinner or something.
No.
He said, Wednesday, man, we get together.
No, because I explained to him what we do, and I'm still blown away how this is such a novelty to people, but that also tells you the state of America, and people look like us, but they think it's just such a novelty that three that are father and son still get together. I don't know. I mean, but that's something else NAACP has to do. We got to get some of NAACP on this show.
That's what we need to do. That's our next goal.
But that's something else
got a
we can
few
do.
minutes.
But I still think you need that voice. I still think you got to have a place where that draws people together, and they take all these different voices and ideas together and put it into one voice.
Yeah.
I think they say singing it around, which means you can all be singing something different, but it has a melody.
I think on that point, that's a good thing.
Good luck. I'm full of today.
But no, I think it's a great idea. We could get somebody from the NAACP.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I would like that. Show, and talk to them about it, and have this type of conversation and dialogue again. What are ways that we could be more involved and help kind of grow? And
you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna work.
Yeah,
I'm gonna work on the local chapter. See if I can get somebody to come out and be on our show.
Yes. So hopefully for all of y'all that are tuned in, you enjoyed today's conversation, man. We want to see you guys. It did go fast. The great conversations always go fast. But make sure you follow, subscribe. I stole your mind here, Dad. Above Average Black Man, where we're here to empower, inspire, and uplift the community. Make sure y'all go check out the NAACP, man. I feel like we're gonna try to get involved ourselves here. So we gotta be the ones that generate some change here. Can't wait for anybody else.
Yo, one more thing. September 30th, I'm having a bowling party for families. It's a fundraiser for FamCon. I gotta say that because we do a lot of free stuff, man. I want people to come out and support us. On September 30th, I'll get you information, man. It's gonna be a bowling party at Winwood Lanes, bowling food. We're recognizing a few people in the community for their outstanding work. It's from 12 to 3. I'll get more information for you, but it's important because everything we do is free.
And what day is this again?
September 30th. It's Saturday. It's going to be from 12 to 3.
Winwood bowling?
12 to 3. Yep. Winwood bowling. 24 lanes, man.
It gives me enough time to practice because I'm not really that good at bowling.
Get the bumpers.
Oh, they got automatic bumpers too. I thought about you. Not one of these. But another great show, man. Devin, do your thing, man.
Follow, subscribe, share, comment. Interact with us. We want some traction. Let's go, guys.
We out. We need to get a speaker for this, for the computer, so we can hear it.
You're kidding me.